You're listening to a main feed episode. Go to patreon.com/Celtic Ligers where €5 a month gets you weekly full-length episodes, stray bonus content and access to the back catalogue. Also helps cover hosting and gives us money for sweeties. Thank you. Celtic Ligers.
Recorded 25th of August 2024.
Do you remember The Gathering? Back in the height of the recession. Do you remember?
Of the Juggalos.
And it was like... it might as well have been. It was like to try to get Irish diaspora to come back to Ireland to spend a bit of money. To go to The Gathering. And the head of Creative Ireland ran it. That they nearly created a separate division in the Arts Council for it. Do you not remember this?
No, I don't at all.
But it was, they really put a lot of effort into it. I don't know how successful it was, but basically they tried another one of these before. It was like back, it was like in the 60s or 70s, and this is such a bad story because I can't remember any of the details, but you know, look it up at home. And it was something like Shannon Airport, the Rosa Tralee, some other thing. They all came out of this project.
Really?
Yeah, it was like 3 really well-known Irish things, and they were all developed for this one, like, basically advertising scheme for Ireland that never actually took off.
Well, do you remember when they made Arthur's Day? I know this is, sorry to cut across, but like they made Arthur's Day, and it was like, I swear to God, I was like seeing a girl for a very brief period of time, and then she was like, "What are you doing for Arthur's Day?" And I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And then she's like, "Oh, you gotta be doing something for Arthur's Day." She was like that. It was like 4 years old at that point. It was like, what's going to happen on Arthur's Day? This thing that Diageo created and then just got rid of. Like, it just doesn't exist anymore. It was like, oh, no, I guess that's not making as much money as we hoped. So that's the end of that. And it's like the Irish people, like another perfect time then to talk about, like I was in Dublin on Friday. I was in Dublin from like Wednesday to Friday. It was one of the most unpleasant experiences I've ever had. And I'm still processing it, basically. But one of the contributing things was walking around Dublin on Friday and just being surrounded by Americans there for the Georgia Tech. They were already there. And they were all...
One more thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is why I brought up Thursday. I forgot all about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Garen Noon, your man from TikTok.
Yes.
You know him?
I do.
The I'm Delicious guy.
Yeah.
He was performing at it.
Brother.
At the Rosa Tralee.
Nah, man. Don't do that.
And he was playing music.
Don't do that.
I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
Oh my God almighty, it's nice. Like, I love Cork. And I love, like, I get a great sense of relief from walking around certain parts of Ireland. But the thing that really upset me about Dublin this time was... like, I moved to Dublin, I lived there for 10 years, and I felt like a real kinship, and like, that's where I'm... Yeah. That's my city, man, you know? And then...
And it's all changed.
Yeah, and I know that's a normal thing. You come back, oh, this is all gone, and this is new now in its place. But, like, it was this horrible feeling that everything was gutted for the benefit of... the worst fucking Americans ever. Like, not even like the worst Americans. So like the other thing that contributed to this is that like we just had to try and find the cheapest hotel, which of course good fucking luck even in, you know, Dublin. So I went for this thing. I found it. It was called like Destiny Student. I don't know what the fuck it was, but it was like €112 for the night, and you get a bed and a shower, and that was all I thought that I wanted. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I showed up. Turns out, not only is it a hotel, sort of, like it's obviously meant for people to stay the night to go and visit Dublin.
Yeah.
It's also co-living. Okay. So there are students that are living there while other people are coming to visit. And then they come in and then it's the type of place where it's like, if you want an extra towel, you have to pay us €10. You know, there's like nothing that they didn't want to charge you money for.
Yeah.
And then you go into it, okay. First of all, they're like, oh, the lift doesn't work. Okay. Then you go upstairs. You get into this thing that's like, every part of it is designed to just make you feel uncomfortable and want to leave and not be there. Okay. We tried to stay out of the room as much as possible because it made us feel terrible. We tried to work the shower. The shower was barely functional. Everything was broken in it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there was a, you know, they had you could go down the hall and there's like the shared living space with the kitchen and stuff like that. And they're like, don't drink the water. You can't drink the water because it's all fucked up because Irish Water are doing works for God knows how long. Okay. And then, like, all of them have fobs. So I'm imagining that this person who lives in the actual co-living would have to have a fob to get into their room. And it is like just a fucking living in a hostel. This is like, and then you're thinking about, like, we were talking about Owen Murphy's book last week, and I was just reminded of this asshole going, oh, it's like living in luxury accommodation. It's like living in a luxury hotel. You'd love to live in a 4-star hotel. And I was like, no, I won't. You're the one who likes hotels. So we were doing that. And then, like, the day then that we had to leave, obviously we had to carry around all of our bags on our back. So we're just like, okay, what'll we do? I was like, oh, I'll go here. And then you show up, it's closed. Oh, that thing that I like to go to is gone. Oh, that thing I like to go to is gone. Oh, that thing I like to go to is gone. But I don't know. And then you're milling around with all these other, like, Americans, and they were, like, really just, it was incredibly unpleasant. It was just felt like the city is built for the purpose of people who do not live in it. You know, everything is to accommodate tourists. You know, like people who suck.
Yeah. So all the Americans are there because of this American football match.
Yeah, college football.
Yeah. And yeah, they were having pep rallies in Smithfield.
Yeah.
Like, pep rallies for just a random sport that no one in this country follows.
Yeah.
They, like, closed off Smithfield for it, you know? It really was the most, like, overt display of Dublin being for Americans. You know, it's like a sport that no one here watches, and they just completely closed down the city. And it's like, this is what all those hotels were for.
Yeah,
you know.
And then the other one is like, one of the teams for the hotel has like, or for the hotel, just battling hotels. But no, the college football team is like a fucking indigenous person. Have you seen that?
No.
Basically, like, you know, the fucking
a traveler.
You got me there. Indigenous American. I don't know how to, you know what I mean. But like with the
Native American.
They like that. I don't know what to call it, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, you know, you're just going around, you're looking at like the mascots for all these, and there's huge tour groups of people just walking around and like, wow, and like carrying their carols bags, and just like there's the whole city. I don't know. It was so unpleasant. I didn't know. I couldn't process it. I had to leave. I was like, I need to fucking go. But like, I was contemplating. I felt bad, so I tried to stick around. And so I tried to stick around. Zainab left. Zainab was crying. Zainab got so upset by it, you know? Like, Zainab, the only other place that Zainab moved from, like, Egypt to here. And everything is like Dublin, you know, if we were in Cork and she sees something, oh, that's like this thing in Dublin. Or that's like, you know what I mean? And then she comes back and she's like, kind of heartbroken. It's like this, there's not here anymore. Everything's gone. Everything's fucked. Everything's like, I don't know. I don't know whether that all makes sense, but like between seeing all these Americans going around like fucking cattle, and then all of the places that I usually like to go to, either like, you know, gone or like under construction, to make them more bougie looking. And then living in a co-living space, I was just like, this in the Liberties. It's just like, fuck, man, this sucks so much. So,
yeah.
All right. There's also this article on the Indo, which I was started referring to. Young people are abandoning bars. White publicans have to change to survive. And then they give this kind of, this interview with this guy, and he's like, what the fuck am I going to do? All these, they're heading off with their pizzas and their coffees and their tapas, and they don't want to come to my pub anymore. And it's just like this disgusting, like everybody dying of fucking liver failure at 55 in rural Ireland, or even, over building New York, because that's what he fucking did. But you know what I mean? It's like, we got to go back to it. We got to go back to these like horrible things. Like, we can only be bad, is all I'm saying. We can only have like really bad parts of Irish culture, like the Rose of Tralee,
where's this guy
or
from?
drinking in a pub. Connemara.
Okay.
It would be like France without bakeries, Italy without pizza joints, Spain without tapas bars. Can you even imagine Ireland without pubs? It's one of our most popular cultural attractions, our unique selling point, a haven for natives and a magnet for tourists, especially at this time of year. This is the Indo report, not this guy, obviously. But what else would our visitors go to where else would our visitors go to sample a pint of plain, chat with locals, listen to traditional music, and dry off? Why does it have to be a pub, I would say? Maybe somebody would debate me there. Like, it has to be in a pub.
I mean, I have no problem with pubs. Like, pubs are good.
It's just that it's the only thing that you're allowed. When you think about like what happened during COVID as well, it's like, how do we open up pubs? How do we pay people, publicans? How do we do everything to satisfy? It's like the two big things are like, one is that like our constituency are farmers and publicans, and that's it.
At meat barons.
And it's kind of like, what's wrong with the kids that they don't want to go to the fucking pub? And then we have to have this article where like we're talking to them. These fucking children these days, they don't understand, and it's like, I don't know, maybe you should broaden your horizons a bit more, man,
Yeah.
What the death of the Irish pub is coming, says Colin Redmonds, owner of Johnny O'Loughlin's pub in Cashel, Connemara, purveyors of one of Ireland's cheapest pints of Guinness at $4.20. That is less than half the price of a good number of hosteleries in Dublin. Redmond hopes he can continue. I don't know. I can continue to pull in customers with his knockdown price, which rose from $3.90 per pint earlier in the summer, and a loyal group of local regulars. Other publicans are having to be particularly innovative to keep their bars open. Rural pubs like ourselves are now fighting for survival, and that's the reality of it, he says. It's gone very tight. Most publicans are just about keeping their heads above water. The post office is gone, the small grocer is gone, and we are next. I feel very much that's what's coming down the road. Goes on. If we want to go on with it, but
yeah, like I think they found the one semi-sympathetic publican. Do you know what I mean? He's like, he doesn't charge too much for his pint, and
they hunted that man down because everywhere else you're paying £7 for a fucking even a pint of Guinness.
But even just that thing of like, sometimes like a lot of pubs do feel like they are for tourists. You know what I mean? Particularly in Dublin. Like they're for tourists first.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not true. But it goes back to that thing of like, there's nothing in Ireland that everything's just geared towards like, if you're not spending money there, there's no point in having it. You know?
Exactly.
Like, it's like pubs for the night and cafes for the day. And then there's nowhere to sit in the city centres. Like even in Cork, there's like there's some benches on
along the river, and then there's a bench outside, some on the Grand Parade, there's some on Patrick Street. But yeah, no, there's not. There's definitely more benches than there are in Dublin, but there's certainly not a lot.
Yeah.
Like when we were in London, like and I know it's a touristy place, but we like got off the underground and we were in like Hyde Park or something. I can't remember where it was. And there's just a bunch of statues and there's just a bunch of fucking benches. Can you imagine? Like spaces to just put a fucking blanket down or something, or just like something to sit on? I know there's like Stephen's Green, but it's just like, It's just mad to me is all. It's just that, like, there's nothing. There's nothing. They don't give you anything. Also, like, you need to go to the loo or something, then fuck you. Do you know? There's actually public toilets in London as well. I mean, admittedly, you have to pay for them, but it's like, you know, you're not going to be in want of a toilet if you're looking for one. Whereas in...
we've one set. We have one set of public toilets.
Yeah, exactly. Wasn't that set up... That was set up during COVID, wasn't it?
COVID, yeah. They had 3 during COVID.
Paulie tweeted this out, which I just said. Vintners are in competition with landlords for the title of most self-pitying group in Ireland. A few years ago, they successfully lobbied for minimum unit pricing and off-licenses under the guise of public health, and they're still whining. Here's an idea. Stop gouging people. But that's another thing as well, like during COVID again, where it was like, we need the minimum unit pricing because, or like, and then, you know, people would be going out and having cans in the street and they're like, no, unacceptable. You need to be having your drinks in here. You can't pay the people who make the fucking cans. We need to pay us to keep us around.
Yeah.
And it's like, how many fucking pubs do you need? Because like, that's the other thing I was going to say about Connemara, where it's like, oh, well, maybe this guy is like, he keeps his pints low. But it's like, in Claremorris, like when my dad was growing up, admittedly, it's probably a lot less now, but there was like 45 pubs in Claremorris, which is like a town you could like hold your breath while walking through. Do you know what I mean? There's just such an insane amount of pubs to choose from at all. It's just like, why? They're like, oh no, our pub is going to close. And I was like, yeah, but is there like 12 more next to it? Like, you
know the mad thing? Back when, like Joyce wrote Ulysses, like the 20s, there were twice as many pubs in Dublin.
Wow.
And it was probably a quarter of the size.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
I'm trying to even imagine where they would fucking go. Probably where all those fucking hotels are going now, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Probably where all the migrant centres.
Yeah.
No.
No.
But it's... Yeah, like... There are so many pubs already.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine twice as many.
So many you could never get through in a lifetime.
See it.
Oh, here's something fun. I don't know if you've seen this stuff about David Simon, creator of The Wire.
No.
So David Simon is very popular on... He's like... I think he was one of like the first accounts. So that's why he's like Stephen Fry or something, where he has like just tons of followers. And then that's when like The Wire was like kicking off and whatnot. I don't know. You know? But anyway, the point is he's got a unique posting style, which means that... it's just the cringiest thing ever. It's all the compound swear words where it's like, listen up, you trifling fuck waffles, you know, that type of shit. And he's always getting angry at people, and then like he'll get into like rows with people. So previously I was familiar with his rows whenever people would say, well, the police suck and you made The Wire, so why don't you think the police suck? And he's like, contouring shit bubble. Like, I love the police. You're wrong, something like that. And, and he's getting into it, and he's like a Democrat. But anyway, it turns out, massive Zionist. Big Zionist. So here's something that he put up. So Irish Unity tweeted out, all they have is a tricolour and a Palestinian flag, and they tweeted out with the picture of Michael Collins. Michael Collins died 102 years ago today, R.I.P. Quote, give us the future. We've had enough of your past. Give us back our country to live in, to grow in, to love. Okay? And David Simon retweets this, like, fairly innocuous. The only thing that I could see is the Palestinian flag. Okay? And David Simon retweets it. In order to achieve Irish independence, he went to the peace table and settled for 3 of 4 provinces, telling allies that in doing so, he had signed his own death warrant. By the way, unfortunately, this man is Twitter blue, so he was right. But what that is what peace and progress often require, the acceptance of half the loaf. Would that Palestinian and Israeli leadership might each send a big fellow to the peace table to get done what obviously needs to be done. But no, they are all much smaller, much more cowardly men.
That is such a misrepresentation of what happened as well.
I know. It gets even worse because obviously, people go like, all right, well, that's completely incorrect. So like but the main one is this guy called @Paul0Neil, Neil spelled Kneel, and he sent this message, and the tirade, I'm gonna have to read it because it's fucking long, but it's so worth it. Just keeping you abreast of this stuff. So first of all, Paul goes, comparing the Irish struggle for freedom to Zionism is grossly offensive and comically inaccurate on so many levels. Israel has been illegally occupying Palestinian land for 50 plus years with the full support of the US war machine. It meets every definition of apartheid. Okay, so here's what David says. Eat a bag of stale unsalted dicks.
Okay.
The Irish arrogance with regard to the complexity of the Mid-East history never ceases to astonish. You mooks were warring with each other as the same people separated by a sectarian divide for decades of bloodshed. And to this moment, you've not managed anything but a temporary two-state truce. Yet you feel assured enough to explain to two distinct and wounded people, both of whom have been told by their leaders that they could vanquish the other and accept no compromise for close to a century, how peaceful coexistence is a simplicity. You know fuck all about what happened under the Mufti in 21 or 29 about the road.
But he was just he was just saying that Michael Collins did the right thing.
I know.
And then like in the next line he's like, yeah, you fuckheads didn't do the right. Like you're
That's
just
exactly
pretending
it. But it's even funnier because he goes, so I was going to read this, but you know fuck all about what happened under Mufti in 21 or 29, about the road to the UN partition, about the war that ensued, about the origins of 67 and the inability of either side to contemplate a peace in which neither Jews would be driven into the sea or a Palestinian state could coexist with Israel. And then you're suddenly like, well, what if I do know that? You know?
Yeah.
What difference does that make? You know, you ignore the same cost. Yeah.
It's also like, you know, he's been like, you don't know the facts, but he's also been like, you wouldn't understand.
Exactly.
But then he's like describing a history that like would lend itself to navigate. You know what I mean? He's like describing our history, acknowledging that we have an understanding of dealing with sectarianism.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's also been like, but you wouldn't know anything about dealing with sectarianism.
Exactly. I mean, and even then, the other thing he's an American, and he's going, why don't you like sit this one out? You don't know anything about the Middle East history because you're sitting over there, you just, judging from afar, and you think that. Yeah. And then he goes, and here's what happened in Irish history. Let me tell you. It's like, are you fucking for real right now? Not only are you saying that, like, you as an American have a better understanding of Irish history, you're also saying that we as Irish people couldn't possibly know anything about Middle East history, but you as an American, I don't get it. But anyway.
Yeah. Like, why would he?
Yeah. And there's also all these like telltale signs, and it's kind of like, I was talking about this where like, he's fucking bollocks. His politics are the general kind of liberal stuff. But like, I was kind of astonished by how Zionism just like fucks your brain so much, because I'm not even halfway through here. I want to just read the rest of this. You ignore the same cost to both Arab and Israeli peacemakers, Rabin or Sadat, as you herald in your columns, and you spout rabid hyperbole such as genocide and apartheid and the kind of sloganeering that leads away from the serious consideration or negotiation. Apartheid, 1 out of every 5 citizens of Israel is presently not a Jew, but rather an Israeli Arab or Druze or other minority, a cohort that by polling continues to assert that it would rather be Israeli citizenry than proposed alternatives by contrast, and ignored by you sloganeers. The Jewish communities
even if that's true, like there's literally partition going on, or like apartheid going on in like the occupied West Bank.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, go on.
The Jewish communities of this one's funny. The Jewish communities of every Muslim nation across North America to the Near East has been, to use a phrase that you shitheels employ a lot, ethnically cleansed. Yup, 900,000 Jews exiled in a handful of years, a coda to generations of second or third class status in Muslim regimes, given to pogroms, and disenfranchisement of this minority. And here you come, only a generation into a temporary ceasefire in your own exhaustive bloodlettings, declaring for what you think is obvious and practicable, for who is at fault and who will be held blameless, despite the fact that neither side comes through their history clean, and all are deeply complicit. You won't solve shit, fool. Your ass-ignorant certitude about a region and a history about which you know little and which you parse with your own checkered history is just another layer, spelled wrong, on the problem. I want peace and the ambitions of two wounded people secured. No, you don't. I've learned enough about the 20th century history of the Levant to understand just how much both sides have to walk back their own frauds and denials and how useless the sloganeering is. And I love the Irish and their history, but fuck if some of you aren't the worst pretenders to moral precision and prescription we all have to endure. And I don't want to get into it too much, because like what ends up happening is you're like going into all of the history and this big like just flooding the zone with shit, as I think what's his face called it, one of the fucking right-wing headbangers, where it's like, oh, you don't know your history. You don't know about the Mufti. You don't know about this. You don't know about this. And you don't know about the UN partition. You don't know. And it all kind of comes from the premise that I think that Israel is legitimate in the first place. Do you know what I mean? It's like, obviously Israel has a right to be there. And what we need to do is navigate. And I was like, well, what if I don't think that? Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole thing is that there's a country called Palestine. And then these people came in and just displaced everybody. Okay. And then just quarantine them into areas which they refuse to allow them to leave, and if they do manage to leave, that they can't return, and they just bomb the shit out of them. And it's like, well, you know, who's to say who's right or wrong? So you're saying you hate Jews? Oh, well, think about what Collins did. But actually what Collins did was fucking bullshit. Anyway, in conclusion, this is, and it's just like, you know, the Zionism just turns people's brains to mush. It just becomes this kind of like, I don't know what it is. I don't know where that anger comes from. Maybe it comes from, maybe it's a self-hatred or something. Maybe you're seeing what's happening and you can't bear it. So you have to be like, well, your hands aren't fucking clean either. What happened in North Africa? What happened here? It's like, okay, man, you're still bombing them. You're still killing them. Okay. Doesn't matter.
I think for a certain, particularly for Americans, there's a sense of like, it's an acceptable, like Americans are so racist. Like obviously Irish people are racist, but like Americans, it's like, you know, it's a founding principle of their country. It's like racism, you know? It was like an experiment in slavery. And it's such a deep neurosis.
Yeah.
And it colors everything they see, you know? That I think this is really like a comfortable outlet for like that deep-seated racism, you know? Like it hits all the points, because Americans, they love being like, you know, oh, I'm Irish or I'm Italian or like I'm 2/5 German or whatever. And then it has like two religions and two ethnic groups, but then it's also like anti, you know, it's racist against brown people, you know, it's racist against Arabs, but it's like acceptable. And then it also involves like a Jewish component. There's a lot of guilt over like it's not like Jews got treated too well in America either. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably not as bad as in Europe, but it was not like well. As in, I mean, in Europe generally. Obviously not as bad as like the Holocaust, but in this way, it's like the Jews are elsewhere, you know? It's like the Jews, we don't have to deal with them. We still get to back them up, and we get to be like acceptably vent against Arabs.
Yeah. Well, David Simon is Jewish as well, incidentally. So, you know, I think there is also that part where it's like, I don't know, that you just see how hideous and unpleasant it is, but like you've just kind of gone like, well, it needs to happen. I don't care. I don't know, like there's that feeling of like, and the American thing, usually it's kind of adorable but irritating, where somebody's like, I'm Irish, and then they're kind of in Ireland and they're like, yeah, I just felt it. I just felt this kinship with the place.
Yeah.
But then whenever I hear like Zionists talking about it, or people who are like reformed Zionists, it's like, yeah, I just kind of felt out of place in, you know, Minnesota. And then I went to there and I was like, I'm a strong, like I'm from here. This is where I'm from. And I'm a strong, beautiful person. I'm accepted. I'm embraced here, you know? And they're like, who wouldn't want that? And like, I just don't think that that's owed to anybody. Do you know what I mean? Regardless. Like,
I mean, like, I can understand wanting it.
Exactly, yeah.
But like, it's like, what's good about it is that there's loads of Jewish people. You know, it's like, you're Jewish, maybe you feel like an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go to somewhere where everyone is Jewish, you know? But that could be anywhere. Like, it doesn't have to be Israel could have been anywhere. There's no reason it had to be in Palestine.
Yeah.
Like, I think Freud said it was like, you know, if it was anywhere else, it wouldn't have taken off.
Yeah.
But you needed that sort of like opposition to get people to care about Israel. It's like you had to choose somewhere controversial to get everyone on board, you know? Because there's nothing that makes people want something more than someone telling them they can't have it.
Yeah, but you're right as well about, like, you know, let's say you're Catholic or Christian or something, okay? And then you could go to, like, a missionary in, like, you know, fucking Ghana or something and have a profound religious experience. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing that means that, like, oh, Catholics need their own state. Otherwise, okay, obviously the Holocaust happened, so it's a different situation. But, like, Zionism existed before the Holocaust happened. It just kind of got, you know, completely accelerated by that. Don't let a good tragedy go to waste, obviously. But, you know, the other thing about it, though, is that there are these people who are, like, in the Knesset in Israel who are, like, could almost be Holocaust deniers themselves, or kind of anti-Semitic at least, where they're like, a lot of the stuff, the violence and the kind of excessive use of force and this dire desire to, like, defend yourself against the fucking hordes is this idea that, like, you can hear these people where, I can't remember where I read it, but they were talking about how figures like Woody Allen would be hated because they would seem to be these weak, you know, effeminate Jewish men, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas what you need to have now is you need to be, like, strong. I'm not the one who got taken to the ovens. And if I was, then I would have fucking fought back with tooth and nail, you know? Yeah. And there's this kind of shame about, like, the people who died, like, thinking, like, you were too weak. You couldn't fight back, you know? And this is what never again means, is that never again, you know, I'm going to... But it is mad, like, just the lengths that this has gone now, where, like, I don't know. I mean, the another thing that upset me during the week was Kamala Harris's address, where she's, like, perpetuating the rape hoax, and then also saying that she backs Israel entirely, and then also not allowing any Palestinian person to speak on the stage, but going like, yeah, they're being killed and that's horrible, but, you know, we also fully support Israel. And it's like, but they're being killed by Israel. So, like, how can you...
Yeah.
And also, like, yeah, again, I repeat it all the time, but just a shocking feeling that all the Palestinians who die, like, that's just their natural state. It's like Katie Hopkins comparing migrants to cockroaches. It's like, they're just tougher, they're hardier, they're different, they're other things, they're beasts, you know? They are something who, you know, their natural habitat is anguish, you know, and horrible. And then, like, last thing as well, this morning, so, like, Israel goes over what they kill a high-ranking member of Hezbollah, they kill the leader of Hamas, and then today, let me just read the headline from the Journal.
They did the one I saw was they did a preemptive strike on Lebanon.
And so like everybody is on like waiting on like what is going to happen, what is Iran going to do. A lot of people in like the kind of who are interested in like American foreign policy over in the States are just like, what the fuck is going to happen? They keep prodding this bear and we're attached to them and something needs to rain and something needs to happen, and everybody's just kind of like, let's just pretend that that's not happening. Let's just keep the good vibes going. And Israel is obviously so the Journal, which basically gets all of their coverage of what's happening with Israel and Palestine, they get it from the Press Association, organizations like that. So you're right. The headline reads, IDF orders preemptive strikes in Lebanon as Hezbollah launches wide-scale attack on Israel. So it's like, oh, we have to get them before they get us, because Hezbollah were obviously definitely going to get us. It's like, fuck, man. Yeah. This is why we're going to put this. This is how we're going to frame this shit.
It's like Minority Report.
Yeah.
Like, we got to
arrest them
before they do the crime. It is wild how Israel just act with complete impunity.
Yeah.
You know? Like, how many other countries have they bombed?
And like Syria, Lebanon, Jordan. Where's Jordan? Jordan's not. They haven't bombed Jordan. Okay. Syria, Lebanon, Iran. No.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Wait. And technically Egypt, Zainab says. Syria, Lebanon, and technically Egypt.
What about Iran?
I don't think they bombed Iran, but they have like killed high-ranking Iranians on like Syrian soil.
Well, I sort of mean like they've acted against. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, I do.
Like
they did bomb
America.
Oh, no. Yeah.
America obviously acts with impunity as well, but like, you know, America's like naturally a fortress.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like bombing countries on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And has like the most advanced military in the world, supposedly. You know. I mean, some bits aren't and some bits seem incredibly incompetent. But like Israel is like just bombing like
all of its neighbors.
Yeah. Like it's such a wild, like it really is just looking for a fight.
Well, Joe Biden said that unless Israel exists, then no Jew in the world is safe. So they have this, and it's like, hey, everybody, come here, otherwise you won't be safe. Also, we're going to just rattle the cage of every single hostile that we insist are hostile. We will bomb the shit out of all of those. And like, is that making anybody safer? That's insane, you know? But it's also like
at the same time, they're being like, these countries are the most anti-Semitic and are an existential threat to Israel. We're also going to just bomb them. We're just going to provoke them.
Yeah. Crazy. But then you have people and there's like, I don't know why I can't get over like people like David Simon. Whatever. This is going to sound so stupid, but like you write something like The Wire, okay, which is like, you know, he's actually a dumbass a lot of the time anyway, but like season 3 of The Wire was very influential to the way that I see like drug crime and policing. Because like if you've never watched The Wire, in season 3 there's basically a guy who gets fed up of policing drugs because it doesn't help communities, you know?
Yeah.
And so what he decides is he's going to take a small vacant neighborhood in his whatever you call it, constituency, I don't know, and he's going to make drugs legal there. So if you go there, then drugs are legal. And so what ends up happening is he's coming to his superiors with all the stats of like here's like all of the burglaries we've stopped, the rapes that we've investigated, the murders, etc. like this. Like, because also the other thing was that the drug crime brings the bodies, was what he was also saying.
Yeah.
So that's another. But anyway, it was like that. Like, imagine me as like a fucking teenager just being like, what if drugs were legal? Insane. Do you know what I mean? Like, are these kind of like the war on drugs is bullshit. The war on terror is bullshit. You have this kind of idea of like everything is, you know, that there are better solutions to these problems and there's nuance to all of this stuff. And then to have like the same guy just go, to use that nuance, I guess, as a sort of shield for scrutiny. To be like, things are actually more complicated. So before you weigh in, remember that. I was like, okay, well then like, he's like, well, obviously I don't want anybody killed. I was like, okay, well then like, what about like negotiations? Well, all the leaders of these parties are all bullshit. It's like, all right, well then what's your fucking solution, man? You know, like, why do you like, oh, the burden of having all of this knowledge and history and just like throwing it out. You're like, well, unfortunately that can't happen because this thing that happened in 1929. It's like, all right, well, like, like, it's so stupid. It's so pointless. Like, it's so anti-intellectual is what it is, you know? It's just... Anyway.
Yeah, like... Do you think he's arguing in good faith? Like, I think he is. I think he's just like...
Well, he just sounds like a conservative. You know that thing about like conservatives where they get so angry that trying to tell a joke that they forget to make the joke? It's kind of like that thing where it's like, it's just a topic that seems to incense him so much that he kind of just stops making sense. Like, I
think it's as well. I think sometimes what happens is that he doesn't realize that the only acceptable outcome for him emotionally is complete subjugation and destruction of the Palestinian people, you know? It's like when people talk about homeless people and they're going like, or migrants, and they're like, oh, they can't live here, and they can't be on the side of the road, and they can't be in tents, and they shouldn't be in hotels. It's like, they're experiencing an emotional reaction to migrants. And but then it's not joined up to logical thinking. And it's like, so they're just seeing stuff and reacting to a piecemeal. Whereas they actually understood their feeling. Their feeling would be like, I don't want these people to exist at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's unacceptable to me to think that. So I'm going to just attack different symptoms, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's the same thing. He's like, you know, Palestinians won't even come to the negotiating table. And even if they did, you couldn't trust them.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So what does that mean? He just means, like, there's no acceptable solution apart except for getting rid of Palestinians.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can't trust them to be peaceful. And they're never going to be peaceful. So, and they're always going to be a threat. So, that you just need to get rid of them. But I think for someone like as liberal as him, it would be like completely unacceptable to think like that, you know?
Yeah, because the bad people think like that. So obviously I don't think like that. But then it's like, what's your solution? Look, we can go around in circles here thinking about a solution. I have to have dinner with my family, okay? So I'm logging off now. Bye-bye. You know, I'm going to block you. I'm going to, you know, I can't think about that. I can't take it to the next step. Yeah. Well, he was in the right.
I know, but...
Because I was also looking up, like, any latest tragedy that happens, you're just like, what's their response to this? How have they assimilated this? How could they possibly assimilate, like, a kid being paralyzed from polio, you know? And either they just ignore it and pretend it's not happening, or they say that it's a lie, or they say, well, why doesn't Hamas just give them up? Give up the hostages?
Yeah.
This is all Hamas's fault. Look what they've made me do to them. You know, as Golda Meir said, the worst crime the Arab does is make us kill their children. Something like that, you know, the human shield stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, but they don't even mean they make us kill their children and I feel bad. It's like they make us kill their children and makes us look bad. Makes us look like we're the bad guys. Because I don't care about them.
And even that, like, it's funny how, like, even... When did Golda Meir say that?
I actually don't know. Would have been in the 80s, maybe.
But I feel like over the past, even like 10 years, I feel like that sentiment was true. It's like, oh, we feel bad for killing these kids. Whereas now it's like, we relish the opportunity to kill the kids. Like, they don't even care about how they look. Like, because say like, I mean, the PR people do to an extent, but they also don't. And then, like, you have the thing where the police are investigating soldiers for, like, using rape as a form of torture. And then there's riots because they're like, no, this isn't only acceptable, it's positive.
הערב בתוכניתנו לוחם כוח 100 מאיר בן שטרית שהתמודד עם הנוח'בות בשדה תימן ועכשיו מתמודד עם האשמות קשות וכולנו רוצים לשמוע מה יש לו להגיד וגם יהיה... תגיד לי, למה אתה עומד ככה?
כי גם אני יכול להיות כוח 100, תראה את הגודל שלך.
אתה?
לא בדיוק 100.
לא.
אז 30.
30 בקושי, ערב 10:30, תבואו.
פתחי את שי, הערב ב-10:30.
That was an advert on Israeli TV for a chat show featuring the special guest appearance of Meir Ben Shitrit, an IDF soldier arrested on suspicion of raping Palestinian detainees at Sedi Taman.
It's completely... It's like the worst crime Palestinians do now is existing.
Continue to exist. Yeah, there was obviously there's like doctors coming back and it's like, no, I'm just seeing single bullet holes in kids' heads from snipers.
Yeah.
They're just like racking them up. That's it. And then they have like, you know, what happened to Hind Rajib, where she's in a car. She's like a little kid, trapped in a car with her family. And then the IDF come at either side with tanks and riddle it with about 300 bullets. And they know that this is a child inside and they didn't care. Because they're not like, they just don't care. They just don't give a shit. And it's an evil place that needs to be completely dismantled. It cannot exist in its current form. It cannot be supported at all.
Yeah, like it's... Again, like the foundation of the project is just like, you know, it's like ethnic superiority. You know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah. And like you sent me an article from The Guardian where they interviewed this guy who was a former Zionist, and it was very enlightening, but it was also fucking infuriating because like you have this guy and he's being very intelligent and articulate about this stuff and kind of thoughtful, and then it's just so insidious seeing those Hasbara lines just sneak in though. Do you know what I mean? Because the thing that keeps coming up is like the leadership. You know what I mean? They'll bring it up and it'll be like, God, it's awful what's happening, it's terrible, and we're complicit and we need to do something about it. But the leaders from both sides are fucked. It's like, shut up. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I hate it when
I know.
Yeah. Let me see.
It's funny because the whole thing of that article was like, you know, and I think for someone in his like position, it's a relatively brave argument to make so openly. It's like, he's like, to understand Israel and their actions, you understand the actions of the Nazis, you know? Exactly. He's like, they're the same. And then he's like, he's like you say, he's like, but the leaders of both, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't see him going, oh, but the leaders of the resistance in Germany, they're just as bad as the Nazis.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
that's funny. Yeah.
The leaders of the Jewish resistance.
Yeah.
Like, they're
Warsaw
fucked
Ghetto.
as well, you know?
Yeah, it's like, they had their problems as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the thinking stops there, like, you know? It's like...
This is a very illuminating thing, though, as well. And, like, the other thing about it is these guys intellectualizing it just kind of pisses me off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get, once again, it kind of like, the original sin cannot be overcome for me, where you just, this is my land now, fuck off, okay? And then they're like, okay, well, let's talk about the issue. So moving from this date forward, like, how do we relate with each other? I was like, no, why are we excluding this, you know what I mean? The things that precede this thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, well, obviously we want to live in an Israel and a Palestine that in harmony. I was like, no, well, I don't want Israel to exist. I've said this already. But like, the thing is, like, when all of their intellectualizing is just from that point onwards. So it always seems like all of your book learning and all of your amazing, like, fucking prose is all bullshit because it's all teasing out this idea of a thing that I don't think should exist. You know?
Yeah, and I think as well, like in that, yeah, he's talking about. I feel like one of the earliest things he references is he's talking about like it's like a book by some author and it's about the Nakba.
Yeah, I have it here actually.
And then he's talking also about a speech that an Israeli general gave after there was retaliation against a couple of soldiers or anyway. And he says that, like, I can't remember the quote. You have the quote. And it's like by the general, and he was like,
well, I have a quote here. Is it Rothberg? No, wait, sorry, not Rothberg. This guy, Moshe Dayan, then IDF chief of staff, gave a short speech that will become one of the most famous in Israel's history. So,
and he's saying that the gist of it, maybe the quote, but it's like in his speech at the time, he sort of acknowledges, he's like, Palestinians hate us because we've committed an atrocity against them.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he published it on the radio, he left that bit out, you know?
Yeah.
I think it shows that, like, it's interesting because it shows, like, a private understanding of, you know, this is an evil project, but I'm looking after myself here. So
yeah, I mean, that was the other. So another part of the thing I thought was good in an interview. Now, this is a bit long, but I think it's worth it because in an interview conducted on 7th of March 2024, the writer, farmer, and scientist Zeev Smelansky expressed this very sentiment in a manner that I found shocking, precisely because it came from him. I've known Smelansky for more than half a century, and he is the son of the celebrated Israeli author S. Yazar, whose 1949 novella Kibbutz Kizeh was the first text in Israeli literature to confront the injustice of the Nakba, the expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians from what became the State of Israel in 1948. Speaking about his own son, Ofer, who lives in Brussels, Smelansky commented, okay, so this thing here. Ofer says that for him, every child is a child, no matter whether he is in Gaza or here. I don't feel like him. Our children here are more important to me. There is a shocking humanitarian disaster there, I understand that, but my heart is blocked and filled with our children and our hostages. There is no room in my heart for the children in Gaza, however shocking and terrifying it is, and even though I know that war is not the solution. I listened to Maoz Inon, who lost both his parents, murdered by Hamas on 7th of October, and who speaks so beautifully and persuasively about the need to look forward, that we need to bring hope and to want peace because wars won't accomplish anything. And I agree with him. But I cannot find the strength in my heart. With all my leftist inclinations and love for humanity, I cannot. It is not just Hamas, it's all Gazans who agree that it's okay to kill Jewish children, that this is a worthy cause. With Germany, there was reconciliation, but they apologized and paid reparations. And what will happen here? We too did terrible things, but nothing that comes close to what happened here on 7th of October. It will be necessary to reconcile, but we need some distance. It's like, I can forgive you one day for the genocide that I'm committing against you. You know, like, fucking... Yeah,
it's a crazy point he's making, because he's saying, you know, maybe we've done stuff to them, but there's nothing like he's sort of saying the worst crime is to kill Jews and Jewish children. So it's like he's like, oh, the stuff we did to them it's by default not as bad as the stuff they did to us.
Yeah,
because they killed our children.
Yeah,
you know, they killed Jewish children. Which is literally the thinking the Nazis had. You know, it's like literally, it's like the Aryan race is the most important. Other races are humans, but they don't have the same importance as us, you know?
Absolutely. But that's like but it's like in your DNA from an early age. Do you know what I mean? There's certain things that you've been told, and I don't like. It's very hard to deprogram that type of stuff, and then it just kind of becomes like second nature. It's like, well, obvious, you know, and then obviously. And that's the shock as well, that the fear, the terror that comes from, well, they did this to us. I can't believe they did this to us. And I was like, you really? You can't? Do you know what I mean? Like, first of all, they couldn't believe that they could do it to them. So that's probably why it's shocking. But then it's also like, it's just, imagine living surrounded by everybody who hates you, and then you're provoking them nonstop, and then somebody dies and like, I can't believe this happened to us. We're in shock. We're in horror that they could do this to us. It was like, it's mental. It's fucking, I don't know what to say. It's like, yeah.
And I think that jump in thinking between the chief of the IDF and that writer, you know, that's the guy who was just quoted there.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the general was sort of like, I have a understanding here. Like, he's sort of like, we've done as bad to them, but we're us. So we have to do what we do. You know? He's sort of like, whereas it's really evolved into, well, there's nothing, anything you do to us it's so much more cruel and evil than anything we could do to you.
I heard a quote which was October 7th, nothing can justify October 7th, but October 7th can justify everything. Do you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy. It's fucking mental. And I think the article is very, very long, and I'm kind of being a bit uncharitable because the guy is kind of wrestling with something. He is Israeli. He served in the IDF. He's like did Holocaust studies or something, and basically was looking at the parallel, like how could Germany do that, and then noticing the parallels in Israel. But like I said, so it is a very interesting article, but the last paragraph really just like left a bad taste in my mouth. He goes, so there's two last paragraphs. What effect would such a constitution have had on the nature of the state? How would it have tempered the transformation of Zionism from an ideology that sought to liberate the Jews from the degradation of exile and discrimination and to put them on equal standing with the other nations of the world, to a state ideology of ethno-nationalism, oppression of others, expansionism and apartheid? During the few hopeful years of the Oslo peace process, people in Israel began speaking of making it into a state of all its citizens, Jews and Palestinians alike. The assassination of Prime Minister Rabin in 1995 put an end to that dream. Will it ever be possible for Israel to discard the violent, exclusionary, militant, and increasingly racist aspect of its vision as it is embraced there now by so many of its Jewish citizens? Will it ever be able to reimagine itself as its founders had so eloquently envisioned it, as a nation based on freedom, justice, and peace? It is difficult to indulge in such fantasies at the moment, but perhaps precisely because of the nadir in which Israelis and much more so Palestinians now find themselves and the trajectory of regional destruction their leaders have set them on, I pray that alternative voices will finally be raised. For in the words of the poet Eldon, there is a time when darkness roars, but there is dawn and radiance. Shut your fucking dumbass mouths. Do you know what I mean? That's the fucking most Israeli shit ever, where it's just like everybody was really hopeful about the Oslo Accords and everybody in Israel really wanted to work it out with the Palestinians. But anyway, now we're set on this, well, if only we could get back to those hallowed days and from the founding of Israel, which was a great, this great, inclusive, do you know what I mean? Like, does that not run counter to the fucking Nakba, which is like the reason Israel exists in the fucking first place?
Yeah.
And it's like, but unfortunately their leaders have set them on a path of violence. I was like, how do you think that people are going to react? Like, remember when the right of return or the March of Return in 2018, where they're just peacefully walking up to the border and getting their kneecaps blown off, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? I wish we could come up with some alternatives, but you can't, they come up with alternatives. They come up with all these things. They say all of these things. They try to do, it's just, the conditions are not there to allow for that to happen at all. And it's not because our leaders are, unfortunately, the leaders which we fucking selected are so fucking, because we're both to blame, you know, even though there hasn't been an election in Palestine since 2006, you know, and then you have people Fatah, isn't it? Is that the one in the West Bank, Zainab? Yeah, where it's they're basically just the anointed Israeli representatives, and even they're getting fucked over, you know?
Yeah.
It's just I'm trying to write my academic essay while just ignoring this massive fucking elephant in the room.
I know. I think it really shows like the stifling effect that like fascism has on the brain, you know? Like maybe this guy is writing a very eloquent piece of propaganda and he knows exactly what he's doing. But I think as well, I think personally more likely it's like he's making an earnest effort, but he is like sort of fascist at heart and it's blocking the end result of his thinking.
Yeah,
you know?
There was a thing in the brief history of time, Stephen Hawking, one of the greats, but he was talking about how Isaac Newton came
to that island.
But he said Isaac Newton was apparently very close to coming up with an expanding universe theory, but the reason he couldn't get there was because he was like, well, the universe can't be expanding because then it would be expanding into heaven. And since heaven obviously exists in this very physical way, that's it. So like it's just like that. It's like you're never going to be able to make the necessary leap because your brain just refuses to, like, because he starts off the article by going, oh, it's the place that I was born, it's the place where my parents are buried, where my kids live, and it's just like, I guess you're never going to get it. You're never going to be able to make that leap. And they have made you that way. You know,
like it's like he could, you know, Newton, he couldn't go before the black hole or before the Big Bang or whatever.
Yeah.
And then this guy can't go before the state of Israel.
Yeah.
You know? It's like you will never get into a discussion about what led to the state of Israel. It all just starts after it started, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. There was, in Harvey Picar's book, you know, Not the Israel My Parents Promised Me, which I might have to give another read, but he really does go into like the massive long story, like all the way back to fucking Moses, basically.
Yeah.
And that is sort of revealing to try and be like, well, this is the kind of thing that they're drawing upon to try and attract people to Zionism, that this thing is fucking ancient, you know? And therefore very important. So, you know, but I don't know. I'd be interested to know that, because there is those people who like, Israel exists now, let's just move on. And then you go, well, what about when it didn't exist? Well, it always did. Okay. It's just, we took a break and now we're back. All right. And the Arabs weren't doing anything with it. The fucking Israelis made the desert bloom. So come on, now we're done. All right. We done here? We done here? Can we move on? Can we fucking talk about something else, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I'm gonna make a coffee, then we do some Irish news.
Yeah, let's do that, and then leave it. Yeah, peace out. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, cool. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Yeah.
That's the end of the free bit. And the rest of the episode over on patreon.com/Celtic Ligers. The Ligers talk about military crafts en route to Israel flying through Irish airspace, fascist Justin Barrett's new political party, and the government finding excuses not to tax land hoarders.